College football's new biggest problem, transfer portal tampering. We've got an allegation against Nick Saban and the University of Alabama for maybe enticing a wide receiver from Louisville to enter the transfer portal. This kid ended up committing to Alabama 10 days after entering the portal. It says Nick Saban denies Alabama football violated NCAA rules in recruiting ex-Louisville Cardinals receiver Tyler Harrell. So Alabama shopping into the transfer portal. I want to talk about how the transfer portal is being weaponized by many of these major programs, including Alabama, not just with the players they're getting in the portal, but also clearing up scholarships with kids that that are probably not going to start. You've got Alabama telling these kids, listen, transfer, go to a school where you're going to start. Give us that scholarship. We know there's currently a scholarship limit of 85, although there was also a report that they're not going to have any scholarship limits possibly. That's a whole nother story to get to. But when it comes to this Nick Saban Alabama thing, guys, all of these teams are tampering in the transfer portal. That's just the reality of the situation. I've been clear on how I think Alabama handles the NIL in terms of recruiting high school kids. I think Alabama is actually one of the cleaner teams in terms of not wanting to give out NIL contracts just for a player to commit to a school. But I've said several times, Alabama paid Eli Ricks from the transfer portal. They paid Eli Ricks $1 million to transfer from LSU to Alabama. If you guys don't know, Eli Ricks is a former 5-star recruit going into his junior year, and he has actually been mocked in the first round of many 2023 mock drafts. He's an absolute stud cornerback. His top two were Ohio State and Alabama, and the rumor was Alabama gave him $1 million. So Alabama, was there tampering that went on with this kid? I'm guessing there was, to be quite honest with you. Now the story says Alabama football coach Nick Saban on Wednesday denied the implication that anyone from his team violated NCAA rules by recruiting former Louisville receiver Tyler Harrell before he entered the transfer portal. So this article says that Saban denied the implication that anyone from his team. That's not mentioning any potential boosters. You see how they get around this? So that's nothing. Him saying, oh, no one from my coaching staff talked to Tyler Harrell to, enticed him to enter the portal. Yeah, it was the boosters, right? That's how they get around this. This is the issue. This is the whole tampering problem in terms of the transfer portal. And this is just kind of a smaller story. We know the big story is Jordan Addison because he's a potential first-round pick going from a smaller school, transferring to a bigger school with more money. This is kind of like the smaller version of it. You've got a receiver at a smaller school, Louisville, gets hit up by a potential booster from Tuscaloosa, and he says, listen, you want to make more money, transfer here, you'll get more eyeballs on you. And this kid, Tyler Harrell, he might have not even thought about transferring before he was hit up by a booster. Same thing with Jordan Addison. These kids might not even be thinking about going into the transfer portal, and then they get hit up with massive offers from boosters before they're even thinking of transferring. They get the thought in their idea. That's why college football transfer portal tampering with these boosters is so bad. That's why boosters need to be removed from college football. Speaking to reporters at a golf event, Saban said, we don't tamper with anyone. I don't know of anyone that tampered with him. Saban said of Harrell, I don't really know that anyone's ever tampered with our players. I just think sometimes when things happen, it makes you wonder. So I'm not going to make any accusations against anyone that's done anything to our players. Well, obviously nobody's going to tamper with Alabama players. You're like, what? That makes no sense. Saban acknowledged that it's difficult to control third parties, whether it's direct or indirect, aka third parties meaning boosters. So Saban acknowledged that it's difficult to control third parties, whether it's direct or indirect, from involving themselves in the recruiting process. And it's really crazy how Alabama is weaponizing the transfer portal. Nick Saban, he's the GOAT. We understand that. And you can see it's like Nick Saban has a shopping list in the offseason that he puts together. We need a stud cornerback. We need good wide receiver depth. We need a stud, whatever. And you can see they got a superstar corner, Eli Ricks. They got a superstar running back, Gibbs, from Georgia Tech, who was actually like a top 70 recruit. The kid's from Georgia Tech, but he's really good, that running back that they got. And then they got 2 wide receivers, Jermaine Burton from Georgia, who led Georgia in receiving the past few years. And then they also got this Tyler Harrell kid. They're completely weaponizing the transfer portal. But you guys want to know something that I found the most interesting about Alabama's transfer portal, overall, how they've done it in 2022? It's actually somebody that transferred out. It's an offensive tackle, Dane Shore. And what's so interesting about this kid, he's a former 3-star, and he just recently entered the transfer portal maybe about a week ago. This kid was in the 2022 class. So last year, this kid was in Alabama's recruiting class, and already he's transferring out. So that just goes to show you that Alabama is not playing games. This is scholarship manipulation, and this is 100% legal, to where if you see a kid, they probably saw this kid in practice, and they just said, listen, he's not Alabama quality. You go up to the kid, you say, for our future and for your future, it would be best for you to hit the transfer portal, and you can transfer anywhere you want. Start right away. Listen, kid, you're probably not going to start here. Alabama is having those conversations with kids where they'll recruit a kid. You see him for a year. You realize in your head, this kid's not going to start for us. He's wasting a scholarship. He's taking up a scholarship. It's an 85 scholarship limit. That is how, with the transfer portal, you can go to these kids. It's a lot easier to do it now because it is immediate eligibility when you transfer. You can go to a kid like this and say, listen, I know it was your dream to play at Alabama. I know we recruited you. You committed here, but we've seen you in practice, and we think for you could transfer somewhere, start immediately. You're not going to start here. And that's how they do it. So the transfer portal is really being weaponized, not only to get, fill position of needs, like Alabama needs a superstar cornerback, they get Eli Ricks. They need wide receiver depth, they get 2 really good wide receivers. They need a really good running back because they've been dealing with some injuries. Brian Robinson is gone. They get a really good running back. Really interesting stuff. And the biggest problem with the transfer portal is the tampering and this idea of superstar players at smaller schools being enticed by boosters who tamper with them to enter the transfer portal. And we saw it happen with Jordan Addison. This is just kind of, this kid's not as good as Jordan Addison, so this story doesn't get as much headlines. But this is another situation when I'm not even sure if this kid, this receiver from Louisville, was considering transferring until an Alabama booster got in his ear and said, listen, you want to make more money? You want to be, on primetime? You want to play for a winning team? This is the problem with boosters in college football, with the NIL, with the transfer portal. It makes things so much easier for these guys. And this was a really interesting story. You can see this tweet. It's flown off the radar, but the NCAA is moving towards eliminating scholarship limits and allowing unlimited coaches. Great for avoiding antitrust issues, nightmare for whatever's left of parity. That's a story. Unfortunately, it's behind a paywall. But yeah, the idea of removing, the key thing there, removing the 85 scholarship limit, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, you can see with Alabama, they're already manipulating the scholarships as it is by telling kids, listen, you're not going to start. Go to the transfer portal where you can start somewhere, you can play immediately, things like that. So this doesn't surprise me at all. The idea, there was a rumor that they were going to bump it from 85 to 90. That was, I think, the first rumor. I don't know if they'll just straight up remove it. Guys, all of this stuff is just so crazy to me. I got to be honest with you. All of it is so crazy. And I agree. Listen, the transfer portal, if we can make it, the problem is even if you have the 2 windows, which is what we want there to be something in place. They've talked about it to where you can if you are a student athlete, you can only enter the transfer portal in 2 windows, which would make things a lot cleaner for everyone, but it wouldn't prevent this idea of tampering. And they asked Nick Saban, listen, did you tamper with this kid? They asked him at a freaking golf event, and he's like, no, my staff didn't do it. Yeah, your staff didn't do it. What about a third party that tampered with this kid? We know your staff is not going to do it. You would never. There would be no need for Alabama's coaching staff to be caught going to this kid's house and saying, listen, go to the transfer portal, when you could just have a booster do it like USC did with Jordan Addison. And I saw Jordan Addison was visiting Texas. I've maintained if USC seriously did give him a $3 million offer, that's going to be tough to beat. We'll see how desperate Texas gets. Could you imagine Jordan Addison, Quinn Ewers, and Xavier Worthy? That could be, although Quinn Ewers is a good prospect, but I think he's a little bit overrated at this point. Ryan Day would not have let go of Quinn Ewers if he was actually a generational talent. I'm just telling you that right. Quinn Ewers might be good. Texas fans might say he's unbelievable. Guys, I remember Quinn Ewers. I know he was rated 1,000. He was the number 1 overall prospect when he committed to Ohio State. But I'm telling you, Ryan Day is the best QB guru in college football. He's slightly better than Lincoln Riley. He's got the track record when you talk about C.J. Stroud being a top 5 pick in 2023. Dwayne Haskins, a first-round pick. Justin Fields is a first-round pick. You've got a guy in 2024 already committed in Dylan Raiola, who very likely is going to be the number 1 overall player in the entire country. Ryan Day knows what he's talking about when it comes to quarterbacks. If he thought Quinn Ewers was going to be a generational quarterback, he would have done everything in his power to keep him. He didn't fight at all for him. He didn't care. So that tells me that, Quinn Ewers might be a good NFL prospect, but I'm not, I don't think he's going to be this superstar. But that would be interesting if they got Jordan Addison paired with Xavier Worthy, and you do have Bijan Robinson for 1 more season. You're talking about a really, really talented offense. Can Texas put it all together? It would be interesting. But guys, just wanted to talk about how is the transfer portal. Again, one of the most interesting things you'll see in the transfer portal, especially at a school like Alabama, is just the overall loss of players. So even like at Ohio State, it's happening. So many of these players are hitting the portal, and I think some of it, like in the case of Dane Shore, the offensive tackle who's a 2022 recruit, the coaching staff is going to these players and saying, listen, we've seen you. We're going to be 100% honest with you. You're not going to play here. And for our best interests and for your best interests, we have the transfer portal you can utilize now to where you can transfer, start somewhere immediately. You don't have to sit out a year. And it frees up a scholarship for us, which is really the only thing that a school like Alabama would care about in a situation like that. We need a free scholarship. We don't want our scholarship clogged by players that we don't think can play here. So let's get them to transfer out. I think there's a lot of that going on right now. That's why you're seeing so much roster influx with all these major rosters. Of course, a lot of it is just players seeing the writing on the wall, like a sophomore seeing he's not starting and then saying, I can just go start somewhere else, get immediate eligibility. There's a lot of that too. But when it comes to like a freshman transferring out after only being there a year, a 3-star offensive tackle, I think Alabama's coaching staff went to him and said, listen, we don't want our scholarship. They didn't tell the kid this, but their thought process is we don't want our scholarships to be clogged up with a player that's not going to play when we could utilize that scholarship to get a transfer portal player that could fill a position of need. And you see Nick Saban basically create a checklist. We need a superstar cornerback, check. We need a superstar running back, check. We need wide receiver depth, check. That is how they're using the transfer portal. It's really interesting. And we've got Alabama boosters, telling this kid from Louisville, hey, you want to transfer? You interested in doing it? And then Nick Saban giving a complete denial saying, my coaching staff didn't tamper. Obviously, your coaching staff didn't tamper. What about your boosters? That's the problem. That's the issue with this. So it is a major issue. And this is something that the transfer portal windows will not solve. They will not solve it. It'll make it cleaner. It'll make it more organized, but it won't solve this issue. The kids will just have to transfer, will just have to enter the transfer portal during those windows. The only thing it would do, it would make the boosters, have to contact kids within a certain amount of time so they could enter the portal before the window closes. That's all it would do. But guys, very interesting stuff. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.